Okay, good evening, Eray.
Hello. Hi, Diane.
I'm in Colorado, you're in California.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just left California at probably the right time. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's June 2nd, 2020, and it's Black Lives Matter Day. And a lot of people are posting on social media about this,
Yeah.
about what's happening. We had enough the last couple of months with the coronavirus and being quarantined, and then the death of George Floyd. Now, where the peaceful protesting was happening a few days ago, and then this kind of turned into, wow, a free-for-all in some of the really big cities. So I feel kind of safe right now that I'm in Colorado, but I know you guys back in Los Angeles. But to just need my glasses now to read, I'm going to introduce you because I'm very happy to have you as one of my guests today, and the launch of The Other Side. So we're here with Eray Brown. He's not only a visionary, author, filmmaker, and activist, he's also lectured in major universities, worked in grassroots groups across the country. His focus is to explore the social power dynamics and use transformational insight where possible to expand awareness and precipitate breakthrough, which is, wow, we need that to happen, Eray. Let's make that happen.
I gotta break through.
We have to break through. Break through
Not,
the other side.
Yeah, that could be conveyed, that could be interpreted in a few different ways with a lot of what's going on right now. Not like break through into like the designer store right now or something, into Starbucks, break through and steal all the scones. We're not talking about that type of breakthrough, folks.
Right. No. We're not going to be talking. No, we're not doing that. No, that's something. Wow, I'm just praying and putting out positive thoughts that we're gonna see the end of this very soon. What's your take on all this? I mean, first of all, you get into the politics side of it, which, obviously there's a lot of divide in this country right now, whether the president's handling this right, whether the governors are handling this right. But there's a lot of layers. And I think we talked about that earlier today, about the layers. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I don't think you say you would like to, get through this. I think what we'll get through is maybe this chapter, this section of this chapter soon, and people are looking forward to that. They're looking forward. We were looking forward to getting on the other side of the chapter of pandemic, so we could at least go out and start to, assimilate like new normal is the term that we're all using, a new normality, but at least, start getting that going. And it seemed like we were right about to bridge into that. And then, now the incident, there was Arbery a couple weeks ago in Georgia, and now George Floyd, and now it's just been an explosion.
That's a bigger hurdle. I think that's a bigger hurdle, of course, than the virus. And we were facing, wow, this pandemic. I mean, it's throughout the world, but I think this George Floyd incident has superseded that. We're not even hearing anything about the virus. And there's a lot of people angry. A lot of people want to see change. A lot of people are getting tired of the same old story, which I'm going to let you elaborate on that one. Because you're very passionate, like me, but I'd like to hear in your words.
Well, here's the thing, I would say this. One, I want people to understand, context of how I'm here with yourself and your brand, The Other Side. And that, I feel honored and I definitely said yes when you reached out to me, because I know about your platform, The Other Side. And, I've been to some events when you first launched it, man, it was over 10 years ago, something like that. Around a decade ago, give or take. And, I've been at some of the events you put on, and there's always been this like broad kind of eclectic group of folk. But, what I've noticed is there's kind of like a tone of a service towards transformation, and towards the transformational focus and theme, and I think that's just kind of set by who you are, and so yeah, I'm honored because my work is in that domain, but it's also been in grassroots activism. So everything that's going on right now, I think I have some vantage point in terms of that I've been involved in activism for a number of years, and came out of student activism in the mid '80s, and then a lot of this stuff in terms of where we've seen whether it's police brutality or institutional racism that manifested in some type of policy issues that have happened, or inside of election stances, or certain leaders, certain figures, that interact with the public and kind of rub ethnic groups in a certain various ethnic groups in a certain way. Not only that, gender groups, gender groups get rubbed the wrong way. It's sexual orientation groups can get rubbed, can get agitated out here if we're not sensitive. So you brought up Black Lives Matter, and but yet there's this thing where it goes back and forth between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter.
Lives matter. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think unequivocally, All Lives Matter seems to be what we got to get about everybody on the planet, because we're tied together as a village, especially with this technology that we're walking around with in the palm of our hand, where we can send messages and communicate with each other and interact with each other for social business transactions, all that. It's made us woven together as a population, as a global village. And so I think the mantra is people have to get that, regardless of what your background is, ethnic, gender, sexual orientation, all that, like everybody matters. So that's a mantra, right? That's a mantra. But yet and still, let's examine that. The reason there hasn't been a White Lives Matter movement is because it's not necessary. Everybody knows White Lives Matter. We can look around and we see White Lives Matter. There may be some white folk that say, hey, wait a minute, I'm getting the shorter end of the stick on it, or whatever, and that's in any community. Everybody doesn't have, everybody's not living the same story. And, that may be because of a variety of factors: choice, path in life, mistakes, how far you've been able to break through on your own, how much support base you've had, all that. So everybody's not at the same strata in any group, but we don't have an All Lives Matter movement because it's not necessary. We know we don't have a White Lives Matter movement because it's not necessary. We know White Lives Matter. Everybody knows that. So Black Lives Matter, that's controversial. That's extremely controversial that Black lives even matter. That's why there's a movement to deal with it. It's extremely controversial, and it's an extremely painful subject to approach, because it's like the audacity of the issues around why we're even having to approach it. And so what's happened is, I do want to point out that a lot of times when people will say white lives matter, it's in the context of a deflection. They'll say Black lives matter, they'll say blue lives matter, white lives matter. Yeah, everybody matters. They're saying that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are saying that in terms of, yeah, we all matter and we got it. And so I matter, you matter. And it's a brush off, it's a deflection. And so when I say that clearly the mantra needs to be understood in this era is that all lives matter, I'm saying that, but I'm tweaking it a little bit. I'm like, yeah, all lives matter, but within all lives matter, within the context of all lives matter, Black lives better matter.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's the way I would say it. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because my group would interpret that as, what are you attempting to do? Are you attempting to thwart the effort of us battling to establish that our lives have value, especially in the judicial system, in terms of dealing with encounter, with legislative and in the legal arena and all that, they're battling just to have a say-so, to have a voice, to have any kind of recognition of our human value. And so when they hear white lives matter, they generally hear it with somebody saying it as a deflection. Or when they hear, not white lives, when they hear all lives matter. And so I want to point out, it has to be the mantra, because everybody, now we're not even talking Black and white, we're talking about everybody from every orientation. This is how confusing, right, with the lingo. We're talking everybody from every ethnic group, gender, and orientation. Everybody has to matter. But when I'm saying that, I just have to tag it with that, because I don't want it heard as a deflection. It can't be that. It's got to be Black lives better matter within that. And I have to say that because of that. So the elephant in the room is institutional racism. And I didn't just say racism. I purposely said institutional racism. And what I noticed was, interestingly enough, right? Because you got, the whole election thing going on or whatever. I just noticed on the feed that Biden's gearing up. He's going to make a statement. A speech on, if he becomes president, how he will deal with institutional racism. He didn't say racism. So that's interesting, because I think somebody got him fixed in on his team, like, dude, you need to focus on institutional racism, because as I've shared with you, there's a lot of confusion about what the nature of it is. And so what I wanted to clarify in this discussion, we talked about, even if much less a large or a global population group or ethnic groups, quote unquote, racial groups, all that, going into a space of tension and attempting to process through some of the stuff. If you could just be a couple, you could just have two people and they going in and they got whatever, maybe there's drinking, there's, abuse, psychological, maybe physical, who knows, whatever. And you going into a therapy session, you're trying to work it out and create a breakthrough. And going in, like the therapist is letting you know, we're going to have to go into some territory that's uncomfortable. And then, so that's it. We can't. So I was, sharing with you earlier that I can't be concerned about too much about it. I like to be polite. I do. I'm shaped to be that by my upbringing, but I can't be so quote unquote nice that I'm holding back on voice and speaking truth into the group and saying what there is to be said, because radical honesty is a mandate, but we need radical honesty layered.
This is the place for that. This is the place for your radical honesty. We want to hear it. Lay it on.
Yeah, we need radical honesty, but we need it also layered with some compassion and understanding and insight. But it's also got to be, it can't be diluted or soft pedaled
Mhm.
to get to certain truths. But once we get an understanding of certain truths, you know, then all of us are playing a role. All of us are playing a role, and all of us are playing a role of, you know, how can we interact and contribute and shape this thing towards something that I would just describe as a more human situation. You see what I'm saying? Because the less human it gets, the more you have disparity, the more you have so many, this group that has all the rights and privilege, or so much of the rights and privilege, and this group over here, or this class of people that has so little of it. This group of people that have so much wealth and resources, that this group of people has absolutely, they're being crushed. And so when I say reshape it, I'm not talking about eliminating the stratification. You're not. There's people at all levels. You know, not everybody wants to be a millionaire. Some people are happy. They just go to their job, then they come home and they deal with their family thing. And they're actually happier that way. They're not trying to get their name on the building. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, well-being and peace of mind are maybe goals for them. You know, and so everybody's not in the same place. But I do say within that, within, you know, how humans are stratified in the power game, right? In the power intensive matrix, because the matrix we live in, it's very power intensive. Regardless of whatever arena you go into, if you go into real estate, if you go into politics, if you go into, you know, the economic, the job sphere, you know, and you're vying for position, you know, it's very power intensive. It's increasingly complex with the technology, and it's heavily predatory, which means people will take advantage of you and they will manipulate to position themselves. And it's just the nature of it. You can't cry about the world is like that, because they manipulated me, and then you know, so-and-so manipulated. You know, what are you going to tell somebody who says that? Well, you stop crying, like you get your game up. You know what I'm saying? Like you learn some tools and some skills so you can counter or not position yourself in such a vulnerable space to get taken advantage of. You know, take responsibility for the role you're playing in situations, because there are people who are predatory and manipulative. And so that happens in the power domain. So we're not gonna extract that out of interaction with human beings. We're not gonna extract it out with power, and we're not gonna extract it out with, you know, vying for, you know, financial leverage and resource, you know, acquisition, and we're not going to eliminate it with race. But we can focus on shaping it so that these things can happen in a more human way, that we have a more humanized society rather than a less humanized society. And that may not sound that specific, but I think there's something in all of us that gets what that's talking about, because we get fundamentally, if you treat somebody like they're less human, like we get what that is. You know, we don't have to be stupid about it. Like, because if we're stupid about it, now your police station's burned down.
Right.
I didn't advocate for them to protest in that manner. You know what I'm saying? I did not participate and say, go, you know, I support the protests.
Well, you touched on this. Let me just ask you a question. We touched on it this morning because I had that post on Facebook that you commented, and then you made a comment about that other person commenting about Martin Luther King. So maybe we could touch on that, because it was about the no looting, no violence, yet change the world. But you had a profound insight on that. And you touched on it earlier today, so I wanted to see if maybe, because this is what
Right.
we're talking about now.
Yeah. Well, you posted the king, and I mean, we all know somewhat about King, that he was a figure that advocated, and I pointed out he used nonviolence as a tactic,
Right.
In a revolutionary liberation struggle, a struggle, towards producing self-determination and human rights. He used nonviolence as a tactic. And so you posted that he, without rioting, without looting, and without using violence, changed the world. And people responded in various ways. Now, that was also in the context of a lot of, rioting, looting, but there's also a lot of protesting going on. There's a lot of layers going on to this thing.
A lot of layers.
A lot of layers. So we talked about that in the complexity that you have. Okay, the basic Black Lives Matter protests going on, and that's not just Black people out there. There's white people, Latinos, Asians out there. There's people of all ethnicities joining in to support and protesting peacefully. Then you have an element that gets more rambunctious, and they started getting in it with cops, and then damage to police cars and confrontations started happening. Then you have another element beyond that of people that I would say now you're getting into the chaos that starts to happen with the tension. Everybody's feeling a lot of tension and kind of rage from watching that image, that just hit tens of millions of people's the palm of their hands and their devices, within a matter of minutes, hours, or whatever. So that bombarding the collective psyche with that image, that's a horrific image to watch somebody die like that. And so now you just got raw rage and chaos. And then you got an element of people, let's be honest, they weren't really focused on, liberation or, who we're going to vote in or focus on organizing, going to organizational meetings. They had some energy pent up from being in the house or whatever, or not being out as much in the streets with the pandemic. And they're just going out to get at stuff. And those people include people, once again, from multiple ethnic backgrounds. They're Black, white, Latino, we all may know some of them in our community or around our friends in the periphery or whatever, like they wild out. So they're in there. So they start tearing stuff up. So now you got looting. Then you got other layers. You got the Antifa, you got anarchists out there. You've got MAGA people disguised as, like they're out there but they're breaking windows out and starting fires because they know it makes it look like it's on Black lives. So you got that level going on. The police have infiltrators in there as well, because that's how they operate. They got to get somebody inside, but then they also have instigators in there, and that's how that's operated. And then you have professional thieves. If they hit a Bank of America and got the safe in Santa Monica, got to the safe, those are professional thieves. So they're going, wait a minute, while all this chaos is going off in the protests, this is prime time for us to hit, some real targets. So you got criminal factors at work. So all those are going on. And then when you posted, okay, Martin Luther King, he changed the world with no violence at all, no rioting, no looting. Like it was just a squeaky clean, polished. I was pointing out, no, that's not exactly an accurate analysis of the context.
Well, I'm glad you called me out on it. I was just
No, but here's the thing. No, we don't have any clips of Martin Luther King grabbing the billy club and give me that billy club and I'll take. No, we don't have that. So he stuck to his We can't even say he stuck to his guns. He stuck to his non-guns. But, you know, he stuck to his tactics and his approach. So you're exactly right on that, because to embody that, right, that philosophy of nonviolence, that takes incredible humanity. And what moved a lot of people is the fact of how horrific, how he exposed his leadership in the movie. It wasn't him, it was him and, you know, thousands of people putting their lives on the line. And they were joined by, it wasn't just Black community, they were joined by, you know, citizens from the white community, Latin. So they were joined by people from other communities, and they exposed how horrifically dehumanizing it was that they were being dealt with, you know, by the power structure in the government. And so it exposed how brutal they were. And so him even being that embodiment, that takes a tremendous, I mean, are you going to sit there while somebody's hitting you and you're not going to defend yourself? You know, let's just, right. So you know, it takes a tremendous amount, right? If somebody does anything, if somebody says something to you to right, you're like, yo, you know what I'm saying? So just think how much humanity that takes, you know? So let's identify how tremendous that is. But all I wanted to do was put in the context, right? Because it's complex. Movement is complex. You know, socio-political interaction with, you know, forces and levels of power and organization that springs up grassroots from the masses and stuff like that, that happens in many cultures and has happened in many times in history. You know, it's just a little more complex than kind of an oversimplified approach to it. So what I pointed out was that there were organizations like, there were radical organizations like the Black Panthers, like the Nation of Islam. SNCC was there, but they were kind of on the borderline. But you know, there were other elements. There was US organization. There were Black student unions that were ready to get activated, or they were activated. And here's the thing: they weren't saying we're committed to violence. They're saying we'll attempt to approach this civilly and non-violently, but if you come at me another way, then I'm prepared to respond, and I'm not abdicating my option, my option to respond. I'm not going to relinquish that. And so these are people, you know, they bought weapons just like the Second Amendment lovers do in this country. You know, they arm themselves and they say, I have every right to. And so that's what they were doing. And so you had that, people who were armed, African-American people who were armed. And, you know, like that was crazy, unheard of. Like we were getting lynched, you know, even during that period and, you know, decades before that, you would be lynched, you would be killed on sight. The government would support it. The lawmen were outlaws. You know what I'm saying? Whatever principles were written in the laws, it didn't apply to us. And so that was so incredibly bold to see that happen. And, you know, it was fearless and shocking to see that happen, that happened simultaneously while Martin Luther King, through his leadership, was directing millions of people. Now, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of people were getting on board with the nonviolent tactic. And so the cumulative of it broke through. It wasn't the nonviolence on its own. That would be an inaccurate analysis. That's what I was saying. Mm-hmm. Okay. So one, I want to, we talked about not being comfortable, that going into this, it's like a workshop, you know, or a therapy session or something, you know, and because you asked me, hey, what's my take on this? And I go, wow, we got to go in this. I mean, like I wake up and I can feel it in my heart chakra. You know what I'm saying? Like the collective heart chakra, certainly in this country, in the planet, a lot of people are waking up. They feel the energy and the tension coming right through them. You know, So when you said, hey, can you come on and talk about it? Yeah, and come on, everybody wants to, like to talk about a hot topic.
Well, this is a hot topic, but it's been an ongoing thing and it's coming to a head. And there has to be some change.
Yeah.
People of all colors and creeds and races are just tired of it. I mean, when is this going to end and what is it going to take? I mean, there's a lot of suffering going on and it's very painful. It's painful for me, my family, friends to see this going on, and you're a friend and I know that this is painful. It's painful for you to see this, and I know from earlier you said your daughter was going to go out and protest, but something came up, but it's a tough time. And you explained it earlier in such a way that by you being open and honest, I was hoping that, with this transformational platform, we can help others. And that's why I brought you on.
Got it. Got it. And look, I got it. And anybody who listens to this gets where you're coming from, because you represent the perspective of so many people who are looking, and man, it's intense. They're overwhelmed. They're bombarded. Myself, I've been involved in it a lot, and I've spent a lot of time even at the academic level. I was a Pan-African Studies major in college, so I studied movement and all that. So I've studied it at a lot of levels intensely, and from a heavy level of analysis. But it's just intense energy that comes through people, through the collective heart chakra. Man, it's what's going on. And like I said, before, let's say if somebody got hung in the 50s or something like that, it didn't happen in the 60s and before, but let's just give an example of that. Somebody got hung, let's say. Okay, we didn't have these gadgets, so how are you going to hear about it? You're going to hear it. The local people are going to hear about it, and they're going to tell each other about it. And then somehow that'll get around to the nearest big city. And then maybe when it comes out in the paper, then it might go from local, or it may get some national press, or it may just get local press, or it's not getting out to the world,
No, it's not.
Right. So now
on this type of platform, social media, I mean, I don't know if you saw the little video. I mean, this is what, you have to help your daughter. I have to help my kids. We don't want our kids growing up in this kind of environment and society where I loved seeing the two little kids. Did you get this, Eray, where I had the two little boys, one black, one white, they were running towards each other and they just embraced each other and hugged. And it was so beautiful. It like brings tears to my eyes just thinking about it, because when you're young, you don't see this, and we're taught, and like you said, our society, it's like we're taught this, and when is it going to be unlearned? We have what it takes to unlearn this, and we're all connected, so we have to have that ripple effect. So how do we start this ripple effect of clearing the consciousness of this belief of this division of race? How do we
one, I would say,
not that you have your crystal ball out or anything.
Right. No, I would just point out preliminarily, no, in anything, just even beyond dealing with this subject of intensity of racial issues, anything, like unlearning is kind of a tough thing, because we're oriented, you bust your butt to get through school, and then, elementary, secondary, post-secondary, all that. And if you take any other education credit, so you busting your butt through all that, struggling to get, and that's learning. And then you find out there's patterns that you've adapted that you may have become ingrained in you, and they're limiting you in your behavior. They're limiting you in some sphere in regards to relationships, health, profession, understanding, moving financially forward, all that. And then people will start pointing out to you, then they say, hey, now what you've got to do is you've got to unlearn. You don't even have that template in you. You got the template of going to school and learning, and the whole thing is, look, I got to get home and study this material so I can regurgitate it, pass the test. Now, how do I get home and unlearn this material so I can unregurgitate? Like, it doesn't even go through to that part of your brain that has been functioning you forward. So what you talked about is that we do have to unlearn, and in a lot of areas we have to unlearn, and that's not the easiest thing. So let's just put that forward. It doesn't happen in the human process as easy as it comes out as a language, a piece of language, right? So, and I'm present to it as anyone. So that can be a lifelong thing to unlearn. But this is urgent, where we're talking about the rights of human beings. So here's one thing I would say, in order for us to get to a place of even moving it, we've got to get present to what it is. So it's just like the same thing as somebody who's an addict, whatever, alcohol, whatever. You know, a lot of times you got to get through work with them and therapy, whatever, just to get them to acknowledge that they're an addict. Right? You go into sessions, just you never really acknowledge that you got a problem. Like, this is, everybody else know it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's killing all the rest of us. You've been avoiding that you've got a problem. But part of it is you may have partially acknowledged it. And you say, yeah, I'll come in. Okay, I get that. No, you don't fully get. You know, so that's why they have them get, no, you have a disease, this, you know, alcohol or whatever it is, it's become something that's taken over you. And if you don't get it at the level that it's taken over you, there's no way you can start to taking steps to counter it. And so it's getting clear on what we're dealing with. And so we start at the top of institutional racism. Why? Because there's a lot of confusion about what racism is. A whole lot. And I know why, because the confusion holds racism in place. And so we don't have time on this on this exchange to go into a whole overview on that, because it's a diabolical construct. But it's also ideology and an institutional system. And it, you know, involves the imposition in line, all that kind of stuff. But it's an institutional system. So the ideology is there, you know, whatever. You could call me whatever, I can call you whatever. We can call the guy down the block, the Asian guy, whatever. That's the ideology aspect of it. The idea is involved in it. But it's couched, entrenched in institutional system. And so the reason I point that out is so people get, because I've shared with you that I don't spend a lot of time going back and forth with people, labeling people racist. So-and-so, that cop was racist, whatever. Some people say Donald Trump is racist. I get it. I get where you're coming from. Yeah, he's aligned with it institutionally because he's aligned with figures, and they're making moves in the institutional system that perpetuate the domination of their group. So there's where it is. It's in the institutional system. But what I'll point out to people to have them understand it quickly, racism is not the white guy over there or the guy at my job or the guy across town calling me the N-word. It's not that. It's the racism. Now people hearing go, what are you talking about? That is the racism. I'm like, no, that's bigotry. That's a racialized thought form. Yes, no. But the racism is that if he's my boss, he's going to be supported in the professionally, and I can't get him fired for that, how he mistreats me or how he stops me from moving forward. It's that if he's over me, he has a whole system that is aligned with that so that I can't get a loan or access to capital to move forward. He has a whole system aligned with that so that at the level, at the executive branch level, judicial level, congressional body, they can stop billions of dollars to being allocated for resources and development in my community, and they can route them into other prison industrial, military industrial, corporate, Wall Street. They can route them into their interests and omit supporting my interests to the destruction of my community. That's in the institutional system. In the media system, that the accuracy of the story and my truth, I don't have a leverage in that system to share my story, to articulate my story. And it's starting to, there's been gains, Tyler Perry, Oprah, you've got figures that are, now that get studios and have leverage in that domain. But you got to look historically, man, going back a few decades. I remember my dad told me, he said, man, coming up in like the 60s, something like that, there was the only two figures you saw that had any dignity of African American, male figures, were Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby. Nobody else was even on that was a Black figure that had any dignity at all. You're either like a butler, a maid, somebody shuffling off to the side, So that shows in that institution of Hollywood. That's an institution, because the 5 institutions, besides the family is one of them, but the 5 main are the education, the media, the church, the state, and the government. So I point out, in the institutional system, if in the educational arena, let's go into the institution, if in the educational arena, the historical contributions of my ancestors are omitted. I did not learn in K through 12. I went to public schools. I went to good public schools. I did not learn in K through 12 that mathematics, medicine, metallurgy, agriculture, architecture, astronomy, that those disciplines were developed in Africa before they were developed I did not learn that historically. It was omitted. The contributions that was by design. That was by design, because you dehumanize the people when you omit their contributions to history, because you can make it look like they've never done anything, so they're never really about anything. They're just animals that we use them. That's why we appropriate. We use them at a lower level. And they don't really have sophisticated, developed human psychic faculties or abilities like we do. You codify that and you entrench that in your intellectual domain. In the educational institution, you do that in the domain of psychology, in the domain of anthropology, sociology, all that. You appropriate that by omitting that we've had any contributions or hardly any contributions. And this group just helped us basically out of the jungle, because we were struggling along, we could barely, talk well, or we didn't have our own languages or anything, we didn't have our own cultures, our own civilization. And you helped us along. And so look, hey, look. Yeah, so they got, so they got to, do the chattel slave thing for a while. We said, but hey, you appropriate them being, and it's easier to sell that to your own people. You see what I'm saying? That's why I'm not mad at a white kid, if he's grown up and his parents were like in the Klan or white lads and sympathizing with it. That's all the kid learned was distortions and mistruths about other people. You see what I'm saying? So I'm like, how could the kid, now once you become a grown adult, now you're culpable because you got to take responsibility, and now you're responsible for looking and studying. Even if you learn mistruths and you got misled, you got game run on you by your own parent, you're responsible, you're culpable. But I'm saying, as a child, like, I'm like, they're teaching you distortion, or you learn distortions from the education system. How can I make you culpable for that? You were just a kid. You were just an innocent kid going to school. So I'm talking about, in the institution of education.
That's where you start. Yeah, we have to reach the kids when they're young and unteach them the beliefs of their parents, if that's
the mistruths. I want, once again,
mistruths.
You see what I'm seeing? I'm taking it away from parents or pointing racism at that person.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm saying, no, we need to teach them the truth and unteach the mistruth. And we've got to root out the distortions and the mistruths. See that anybody from any group, you know, is more beautiful, moral, and intelligent than everybody else because the complexion of their skin is the biggest fake news on the planet. And I heard this professor Dyson said it when he said it. That's a good way of stating it. It's the biggest fake news on the planet. But that fake news has been taught for centuries. You see what I'm saying? So this is how I guarantee you that cop that was on the dude's knee, it wasn't just him that had his knee on George Floyd's neck. He had been taught that. He never learned anything, you know, about our humanity being valuable. That's why he responded that way. It's because we don't really represent that much. Its value in the human game. We haven't had that much of a contribution, and this is the way you got to deal with them. Because really, bottom line is, they're probably more crime prone. They're pathological by nature. See what happens in the game? Because I'm a black male. If we're 6-7% of the population, and we're 60-70% of the prison population, well, how did that happen? How do we articulate that in the intellectual domain? That either happened when we have all these expert PhDs, sociologists and psychologists and criminal, that either happened because, well, they're just given to, you know, lower thought activity and mischief in being unruly and untrainable. And so they're kind of pathological. They have a pathological bent to them. They're pathological by nature. That's how we get 6% of them in their 7. Or it's either that we come up with the intellectual evidence to support, or it's some diabolical shit going on right now. And they've been enduring a system that has been dehumanizing them for centuries, but leaving them in the most limiting, constricting circumstances, you know, financially, socially, health-wise. And what happens is, when policies happen like that from the top, people who are in those situations, in those limiting situations, resource-wise, and crime proliferates, drugs, poverty, undereducation, all that, they start to encircle themselves from their own choices in it. So now they become, you can point the finger and say, yo, they do it to themselves. That's a diabolical trick right there. You know, it's a cold trick, but look, it's a trick because you took the gun and you shot that. We can always say, come on, stop telling me about police brutality, a problem with the police department. That's what folks always say, don't they? They go, yeah, but how come you killing so many of each other up? Let's focus on that. Never mind that over here. See, that's the move. And that's how insidious it is. That's how diabolical the game is. Because, yeah, they've been, you know what Malcolm X said? They asked him, they said, well, how come they said you kill each other? You're talking about, you know, that from white society, you know, you're dealing with so much mistreatment and injustice, but then you guys kill each other. And he said, unlike a deer or a rabbit or a bear, it's only a certain season when you can hunt them. But he said, for a black man, year round, it's open season. You can shoot them, get away with it, and there's no penalty. So because of that, he said, other black men know this, and it makes us hostile towards one another. We can kill each other and get away with it, and nothing will happen. See, so now you've encircled the people at that level of limitation and angst and rage. You know what I'm saying? And they're undereducated and they're trapped. And now they start going at each other. And you point the finger and you say, well, that's what you guys do. See, it's a cold game. And the fact of the matter is, it's still the game. We have to take the responsibility as a people. If I'm speaking, you know, to inner city youth from my community, I say, so what? It's the game. But guess what? The game goes down. So you got to figure it out. You got to figure it out, and you have to stop playing into it because it's already set up. You're already behind the 8 ball. It's set up for you to be routed into the prison industrial complex. They're going to make money off you. This is going to be, you're going to be free labor, and you're routed.
You're so deep here.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, see, this is what I studied in college. So that's how I can say what I learned. I didn't learn that earlier on. But when I got to college, I was like, oh man, like this is a mess. Like this is a cold labyrinth, how it operates. But we got to get present to it so you can counter it, because the whole thing is if you can't precipitate a shift, come to an awareness about it. Let's go back to the example of the alcoholic in therapy. And if you can't get present to your alcoholism, and where it's rooted at, it may be rooted at there's a hole in you spiritually. You never felt complete about something in your life or your relationship with your parents. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's at the core of it? What's going on? Where's that hole that you're trying to fill and compensate with it? Because if we don't find that, now we can't precipitate a shift. And the beautiful thing is when you see somebody facilitate amazing shifts in their life, whenever we see that, it's just, everybody's just amazed, Yeah. Yeah. So with this, once again, I pointed out in the institutional system, this is where racism is entrenched. And I would also say, so I don't go when somebody says, oh, Donald Trump is racist, so and so is racist, I said it gets silly because you could be talking about, whatever, Frank is racist at work. And then somebody says, no, Frank's not racist. And then Frank says, I'm not a racist. And then somebody else say, oh, well, you're racist. And then, the other person counter, they say, you call me a racist? Well, that's racist that you call me a racist. Now, this is all getting stupid. This is all getting stupid and confusing. It's all getting very confusing. That's why I said, where is the target of the racism? It's in the institutional system. So a white person, can you ever tell me that you're scared that you die if the police pull up on you walking down the street? Because the institutional system will kill you, not just that individual. The institutional system will back you. It's not the guy that has his knee on your neck. It's that the whole institution is supporting him, that he'll get away with that. So can you walk in an institution to get a loan or access to capital, and have you experienced that because of your complexion? It's not going to happen.
So you're saying that it was the backing of the institution and not the individual cop. You think he's got the okay and he feels empowered by
if he never had the okay, he wouldn't be so cavalier about it.
Mm.
When he's sneering on there, he's saying, I got the whole American law enforcement institution behind. We do this all the time. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm gonna skate. At best, what are they gonna give me some time off, and I get whatever I give. I'm gonna get my.
That's where we need to change. We need to change that whole thought process.
There we go.
From the top and work. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because then the individual, then we'll go back. His life might have occurred different if he'd have known, hey man, that's not the value system here. We don't deny people's humanity in their human rights here. We don't do that here. So then he may be shaped a whole nother way. Like, oh, okay, like I gotta respect. Yeah, you gotta respect them because you wouldn't have kneeled right there on the white guy with the business suit in front of everybody, all for you right there until he died. You know better than that. What the hell you doing? His life is worth something. You don't do that. Man, you have all this whole corporation to come down on you. You'll be under the jail. You know not to do that. It's an institutional equation all the time. So that's, you see how I direct the target off individuals. I'm not saying individuals are not culpable. I'm not saying, somebody say, oh, Donald Trump is racist. Look, I'm just saying I'm not spending my time with that because He's already shown you by what he's aligned with. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I'm bringing this conversation, that it's entrenched in the institutional domain. And then I would also point out, when you have, someone will say deflections. Someone will say, I was once in a group where we dealing with some kind of, it was an exercise of communicating about relations in this group. And there was a white guy, I think it was a therapist. And he said to me in the group, because I told him about some experiences I had, and they were, whatever, just interesting experiences. I wasn't trying to get into racism or anything. I was just telling him about experience. And he goes, well, I don't have a racist bone in my body. And I was just like, you see what I'm saying? But so what? The whole thing was for me to articulate to him. I said, dude, because the mandate for the group was for us to be authentic and radically honest with you. So I'm like, since we're in this group field, I said, let me be honest with you, dude. Let me be radically honest with you. That was absolute bullshit. Okay. I can't even tell you, I don't have racist thought forms in my psyche. It's so deeply permeated in the American collective psyche, racism. I can't even tell you, I don't have racist thought forms in my psyche, and it's directed against me. At best, I can tell you I'm being vigilant about it.
That's very honest. That's so honest. Yeah.
At best, I can tell you I'm being vigilant. So I was like, that's the best you can tell me. You can't tell me you don't have a race. That just means you've got a huge blind spot. So that brings me to blind spottedness, right? Blind spottedness is just a reality of humanness, that we all have blind spots, right? Because we got two eyes on this side, that we don't have them like fish, or we would see. No, seriously, right?
Yeah.
So we running back, we don't see yin and yang together. We think they're separate, we think high and low are like separate. No, high and low are apart. There is no low without high. It's the whole thing. But that's because my theory is because we got two eyes on this eye. So we see things dualistically. And so, because that, we're blind spotted. And so, people can have blind spots about finances, relationships, all that. Look, I could raise my hand, blind spots in all kinds of areas. So with institutional racism, I would say there's a huge blind spot for a lot of people. And these are well-intentioned people, wonderful, well-intentioned people, but they just have blind spots about what's taking place. See, so once again, it's not about indicting everybody and saying, bad human, you're wrong, you need to feel a lot of guilt. Because I think when a lot of people, especially white people, they attempt to come and find out, like, how can I support? And then they run into this, horrific, this, look, it's in this, and this, and your group is in this, and they're like, yo, but I just made a sandwich and I came here and I was trying to see how they could, but you done, and over the centuries, and then I just thought I got beat down the other day. They're like, yo, so then they started kind of like, well, what are you trying to, you want me to like, feel like I just did it to you? Like I didn't just do it to you. I came here to help. That's, and then, so they're encountering that. And really, I think, like I'm more experienced with it. So what I would share with a person like that, especially a child, I would say, don't even spend time wasting. What is guilt going to be productive? You didn't do it. You're just learning about all this. You're just being a human being. But that's not going to help me anyway as a Black person. What's going to help me is you becoming more aware and taking the role of shaping and contributing to shifting this thing and dismantling the institutional racism and dissolving that. That's,
Thank you.
You see what I'm saying?
That's a perfect note to end on with. We have to stop because I could go on for hours talking to you about that.
You've been up a long time.
I think we need part 2 for this conversation, and maybe I bring somebody else on and we'll have this kind of back and forth thing, because you definitely have a lot to add. You brought so much enlightenment and awareness on everything. I hope people are more have more of an understanding.
No, because you see how I went to that in terms of like sharing what, because I've seen them struggle about how can I help, and then they come with a positive spirit, and they're like, yo,
I
they're
like
like,
the positive spin on it. We have to get the anger out. We have to make changes, and we have to.
But what we have to have tools.
Kindness. We need the
tools.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a certain amount of distinctions. I have a certain amount of distinctions in tools where I know where to put the target. I don't get into your racist. Oh, that was racist. Oh, man, stop all that. That's not, no, we're attempting to find out like what's going on, man. Like, there's a lot of confusion, and there's a system, and now it's boiling over, if we don't have the tools and we're confused, everybody's just going to experience how exasperated, they're going to express how exasperated they are and exhausted.
But thank you, Eray. Have a pleasant evening. Thank you for being on the other side. I'm inviting you back. So I hope you come back.
TheOtherSide.com.
The other side. We'll see you on the other side too, right? But hopefully not too soon.
Yeah, no, you need to get with it.
Get with it. The Other Side. We're on YouTube also, and theotherside.com.
We're integrating the sides together. We're bringing it.
Bless you. Okay. Have a good night.